I have enough room. All right, so we are in Shin Ted Vav 315 in Orachaim, and this is I like the title Durim Hasrim Mishum Ohel B'Shabbat, things that are forbidden because of Ohel on Shabbos, whatever Ohel happens to be. Part of what I want to do here, just to give a couple goals, right, in looking at the Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah Berurah, is I actually like define what is Ohel Arai and what is Ohel Keva, which we haven't really. I don't think we did necessarily a deep dive in class into like what it is. If you remember, at some point Rav Nachum he gave us somebody's solution, which is about the materials actually that are used. Like a stone is not. We'll see that a little bit in Mishnah Berurah, but that's not his main thing. Um, Stone is kavua. But we'll see how the Mishnah Berurah understands it. And I also really wanted to, kind of dive into some. There's one major thing about things about like if you're not using the airspace below it, and also particularly there's going to be what I think is a kula of the Mishnah Berurahs that I don't know if we saw in class. So I want to go into that as well. So let us dive in. I'll read Aleph. We haven't done Aleph yet is in this class. We've done it, of course, in our regular one. And it's kind of long, but Asur lasot ohel b'Shabbat v'Yom Tov afilu hu arai. Right, so you can't make an ohel on Shabbat on Yom Tov, even if it's a temporary ohel. V'davka gag, right? And what are we talking? We're talking about a roof of a mechitzot mutar. You can make walls, although we're going to see, of course, the limitation on that. And the Mechaber just says you can't make a mechitza unless or it's only forbidden if it's made to make a sukkah permissible or to allow you to carry. In other words, like you have a two-walled sukkah with schach, which we talked. I don't know if the Mishnah Berurah gets into this, like how you can like because at the end of the day, it's tasev v'lo min asui. If it's not a kosher sukkah, if you put the walls up after the schach, but okay. But if you make you add a third wall to sukkah, or you make yourself a wall for carrying purposes on Shabbos, that it was the kotel hamateret or the dofen hamateret is the problem, and not just a regular.
Although that's a machloket in the Gemara, right? That's the whole, if the master doesn't like it, he can close his eyes.
Yeah. So but this is how we paskin in the end. And well, the materet is to me. I shouldn't say that. The Shulchan Aruch only brings these two cases. It's the Ramah. He says of a mechitza hanaset litzniut be'al mashare. If it's just merely for privacy matters, that's why you have it. That's permitted. Right. Therefore, you can put a curtain up in front of the door. We're going to get into the Mishnah Berurah has a chumrah around this though too. Alpha pisha kavu asham, even though it's permanently fixed there, or maybe he's got an explanation for this. V'chein parochet lifnei aron kodesh. Also, no, who was it? It was Noam who had the story of the parochet falling off the Aron Kodesh, right? Having to put it back on Yom Kippur or whatever it was. As long as you don't make a tefach's worth of a gag of a roof with that. Right? So you can make it, a wall that protects you, gives you some shade, right, from the heat, or you don't stay awake all night because of the light. Or that sorry, here it's or or that you don't want the wind blowing out the candles. And he has this, you can't make a mechitza in front of a light in so that you can have sex. That's would be a mechitza materet at that point. And also in front of books in order to either have sex or to pee or something like that. Unless there was already a tefach of the wall there on Friday, because then you can, if you could be the general idea here, if you could be mosif on a gag an ohel arai, you can be mosif on a mechitza arai as well, and we'll get into the question of mechitza keva there as well. A lot in this first seif here. So, all right, did I say anything wrong, confusing, that needs anything like that? We feeling good about the first seif so far? Till the Mishnah Berurah will help us out here. Okay, let's jump into the Mishnah Berurah. We're going to start with Aleph, because where else would you want to start with Aleph in the Mishnah Berurah? I have to decide if I want to do. There's a Beruah halacha I like also here, but yeah, maybe we'll do a little bit of that too. All right, let's start with Aleph. Ori, you were here last. You get to read.
Great. Sorry, I had some technical difficulties.
Yeah. Blame the technology. I understand.
אסור לעשות אוהל וכולי, דעושה אוהל קבע, כגון שפורס מחצלת או סדינים, וכיוצא בזה לאוהל, ועושה אותן שיתקיים. So making a full tent, permanent tent, for example, spreading those mats or sheets for a tent and making them so that they should actually stay.
Good. By the way, sorry. So what were you going to say?
I was going to continue, but
oh no, that's his definition right there. Yid Kayem, right? That's
Mhm.
Kavua, right? It's not about the material. It's not about it is about, is it permanent or not? Which of course is a thing that we see in many of the malachot. Permanence.
Yeah. Actually, isn't he saying it's the intention to make it permanent?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's which is what will always go on. It's like the intention of what we get into kosher next week. We'll see that around the how long do you intend to have this knot?
I was just going to ask, how long is permanent here in this case? Because is permanent a week, a day? If I want to put it up for a day, do I want to put it up for a week? Am I going to, am I going to live here until the sun goes nova? I mean, what, how permanent is permanent?
Good. I try to remember if the Mishnah Berurah says anything about that in any of the comments that I saw. I did read through, I went through all the Mishnah Berurah on this, and I can't remember if he does. But it's funny, the Yid Kayem in general, we won't see until we get to kosher, which kosher people will try to be really meduyak about what is a permanent knot? Like, how long does it have to last? Is it a day? Is it a week? Is it a month? And we'll see all those opinions actually being thrown out there. I will tell you, hold up on this, because there's a Taz that I'm planning on teaching in 2 weeks that he has I think what is a really interesting and good theory of all of this. So
we had similar language around makeup.
Exactly. Yeah.
I just remember the debate we had about makeup and Yid Kayem, but is indefinitely a decent way to? I'm just trying to understand the pshat of Yid Kayem. Indefinitely would just mean like I made it so it stays until, so what would not be indefinite would be like a tent where I know natural causes will bring it down in the foreseeable future. Like I don't intend for it to stay of its own. Whereas if I tie it pretty tight, I think it'll stay indefinitely.
But definite could be, I'm making a sukkah and I only need it for 9 days.
Exactly.
8 days.
You don't even need it for the 8 days, right? You need it.
You need it for 1 day, really, right?
Oh yeah, you're right. One, you could just not eat and sleep the rest of the chag. Yeah.
Well, Josie, that's almost the like penultimate definition of arai, because your sukkah necessarily is supposed to be arai.
So there you go.
Intention is defined by arai.
Yeah, it's a
it's a dira arai, but it doesn't have to be. You're temporary dwelling there, but you're not. But you can have a sukkah that's actually a permanent building upon which you lay the schach occasionally. So it doesn't actually need to be.
So I mean, I will wait till that Taz, but I would make a claim that 2 things. One, if it's something you're planning on putting up and taking down all the time, that sounds all right to me. That's like not Sheet Kayem. Like, I put it up for the moment, I'm gonna take it down eventually. Not eventually, like 6 months from now, but like it's the kind of thing I'm gonna build and unbuild all the time, right?
Because it's mobile.
Exactly. There is one where I think we will see where he talks about, actually for the curtain, where he talks about like, what does it mean, a little bit of Mit Kayem. So yeah. Good. I'm glad we spent time on this, because I think that like those 3 words, Sotan Sheet Kayem, is like the most important thing we're gonna get out of this whole piece, as far as I'm concerned. So of course I'm the teacher.
I also think it's almost like one of those halachic Shabbat concepts that keeps coming up. And I don't know if this Yid Kayem applies to another, but I definitely think it has value to, in your Shabbat thoughts.
Exactly. That's also going to be a big question. does it apply across, all the malachot in the same way? Does mitkayem mean the same thing or not? So, okay, do a little bit more. Good. Keep going, Ori.
After ein ze binyan mamash chayav mishum boneh. Even though this is not your classic binyan, right now we're talking about the Ohel Sheit Kayem, the
like the Machabelet or something like that, right? Yeah, so yeah.
Right, but we're not even talking about the Arai case right now. We're talking about like an Ohel Keva.
Exactly. Yeah, but with
that's
like
also not binyan mamash, but it's still chayav mishum boneh. Right, Dasiat Ohel hu toledet boneh, because making a tent is a toledet of a boneh. The hasotro chayav mishum soter, which would mean that if you were to take it down, destroy it, that would be soter, because it's just a tolada. It is a tolada malacha. The gazru al ohel arai mishum ohel keva. And then the Dirabanan comes in for an Ohel Arai because of the basically Doraita Ohel Keva. B'chein al stirat Ohel Arai mishum stirat Ohel Keva. And the same would be true of stirat Ohel Arai because of the Doraita of stirat Ohel Keva. I understand correctly?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So Soter can be a Doraita?
Soter is. Soter al manat livnot. It's
right.
It's a little confusing. I will say in the list in the 7th parak of Shabbat, right, when they bring up Soter, it doesn't have al manat livnot, unlike if I remember correctly, like mechika al manat lichtov, I think does. But in the 2nd parak, I believe it does. It's explicit that when they say Soter, they mean only Soter al manat livnot. So.
And we've seen the rationale of that several times, that there should be some creative intention.
Exactly. Mekal is generally seen as not being a deraita problem. So,
okay. Though in this case, I could imagine creating, when you talk about the Mishkan, you could really make a case that there was a lot of soter in the Mishkan.
Yeah, well, also the whole Mishkan though was soter and al manat livnot all the time.
Exactly, all the time. Yeah, that's what I was thinking, specifically in the context of like an Ohel. So in that way, it's really quite a good fit.
Yeah,
but at the same time, isn't it relevant if it's soter al manat livnot bim komo, which would not be the case for the Mishkan?
Yeah, and I think that comes up somewhere, if I remember correctly. Maybe that is in the 2nd parak of Shabbos. That comes up, the whole question of that. Okay.
The other.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, Origo.
Oh, well, it's just at the end is just
don't worry about don't worry about the end. So, yeah. I want to do it. Let's do the beer halacha. If we're gonna be, but we'll jump to ve'im mechitza asura v'chule. Do you guys see that in the beer halacha? Let's do that. Maybe Josie, you want to read at least start it out. It's a little bit long, but we'll do it.
Sure. Let's give this a try. Ve'im mechitza asura v'chule. L'chora yesh lahakshot meha de'ita bebeit alamed bet. Avanim shel beit hakesei mutar letzdadan b'yom tov. Umasik sham hatam. De'af demechitza levad below gav chashiv binyan arai v'asura be'alma. So what are we talking about here? So in the light of what what objections were raised in Beit Salamed Bet, where you talked about putting together a bunch of stones to build a toilet seat or a toilet holder on Yom Tov. And we discussed there the reason that that even a wall alone without a or rather that a wall without a roof is considered a binyan arai, and it's still prohibited.
Good.
Hacha mishum kvudo lo gazru banan v'chein hu sham berif v'huva din ze betur shulchan aruch siman shin yud bet. And this is what the but the Rabbanan let you do it mishum kavoda briot, presumably. Like, so you shouldn't be embarrassed. You should put up a little wall so that you should be able to poop in peace.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the Reef brings this down, and also the Tur and the Shulchan Aruch in Shin Yud Bet, which I think we covered a while back. Hazet refresh the gam v'chitza arai below gag gam kein asur.
Uh-oh. Yeah.
So our problem is still exists. If just a wall is a temporary wall is without a roof is still asur. After ein al zeh shem ohel arai asur mitam binyan arai. Even though it's an ohel arai, it's still a binyan arai. You're still putting something together temporarily. So ohel is a tolada of binyan, of a boneh rather, but boneh could have other presumable toledot, and this is a bechitza is a similar one. The afshar de mechitza avanim she'ein sha'aneh. So, but it's possible that that a wall of stones is different. The derech binyan kevahu. Ukshematzadidim b'karka levinyan keva chayev mishum boneh. Uchdiita beresh perek haboneh ulahachi hamir tfei. But it's possible that stones are special because it looks like you're building something permanent. We build permanent structures out of stones, presumably.
Exactly.
And I'm sorry, I'm adding my I'm Perish Yosefa as into this as well.
No, but that's good. I like that you did that, right? It's because all of a sudden he's brought in Rick. Now we were talking about that was with Ohel, right? But he talks it's not about the material, it's about Yid Kayem. And now he's like, well, maybe at least for Mechitza, but maybe he wants to extend this. The material might also be important, right? That when you pile up stones from the ground, it's a little close to keva. It may not maybe arai, but it's not quite arai. It's right. And so it's still a gezerah of the Rabbanan, but it might be like a stronger thing.
And so it's brought down and it's discussed in the Beresh Parak Habona, which I don't know which parak of Shabbat that is.
It's later. It's far out, but I can't remember which number.
Right. And maybe we should be more stringent with that.
Yeah, or it is more stringent with that,
or
right?
It's more stringent with that. ולפי זה ייתכן לומר דהד המתירים מחיצת ארעי לצניעות היינו נמי דווקא בדבר שאין דרך לעשותה תמיד לקבע. כגון בווילון או מחצלת וכיוצא בזה, אבל אם יעשה מחיצת ארעי של אבנים ולבנים, זה על גב זה אסור. So what are we saying here? We're saying, and in this case, we would sort of establish saying that we're okay with a mechitza arai for tzniut, for modesty. It's hainu nami dafka b'devar she'en derech lasot tamid lekeva, because specifically for tzniut, we're not building something permanent. This isn't like a permanent thing. Kagon b'vilon or machzalet, like a curtain or a mat. But if you make it a mechitza arai with stones or bricks, one on top of the other, it would still be forbidden.
That's as far as I wanted to go with this beer. So yeah. All right, Ori.
I just want to rewind because I'm not sure you translated, and I'm not sure if this is adding something. Ucheshem mitzadadan bakarka.
Yeah.
Keva. I was wondering if that. So there's two things here. The rocks could be different because they are a lot more sturdy because they're like real buildings. And there's this touching the ground element that presumably the mechitza or firmly planted in the ground might be a better word.
Yes,
which could be another criteria.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what he meant by mitzadadan bakarka.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I kind of I think it's just misaden is to arrange, right? Something like that. But I think the karka piece, he's hedging a little bit here, right? He's like, I don't really know. Is it because they're stones or because they're stones and they're in the ground, on the ground, and you're right, versus the hanging curtain, which would be a different case. Now, of course, obviously for any material that's not like a good material for building a wall, you have to go from the top down and use gravity to help you, and not the other way, right?
I don't know. A machatzelet could be pretty rigid.
Yeah, you think that to stand
you wouldn't have to necessarily hang it. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just, there's got to be some material that's sort of
well, I mean, you
defies that.
if you put a barrel up to like block the light, that would probably work too, and that is definitely from the ground, right? So it must also be about that you're putting stones up potentially. But he adds the karka piece there in an interesting way that I wasn't sure what to. It felt like it came out of nowhere for me a little bit. It makes sense in the sugya, but he just kind of like throws it out there and then doesn't keep going with it. So I'm not sure.
Where, I mean, the
But
question
he's
is, where
very
else would they
anti-Shabbat.
go? Like, where else would you be talking about, oh, I'm putting some stones up on a table to provide me with like in the I don't want the wind to blow things out. Like I'm putting stones on a windowsill, or
I
I'm
think they
putting,
need as
yeah.
opposed to hanging it, right? As opposed to things that you hang, which are, is it because they're more flimsy than stone? Is it because, is both, do you need both of them? If I hung a bunch of stone from something, would it not be such a big deal? I don't know.
Or if I took a big stone slab and put it up against a door, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I don't know. It's hard to say. I do think the Mishnah Berurah, the main thing I really wanted to take from this is that he's number one, he's not fully sure what Ira and Kavua mean, I think, right? It's something about Kaima, but also maybe has something to do with the material, and maybe also has to do with the Karka. And maybe all three of them. Yeah. So, or two of the
Yeah,
three.
I mean,
Remember
you can
this?
say it's
Go for
contingent
it.
on context.
Yeah.
There's obvious exceptions based on context. Like you could say with the mechitza, it has one rule, and with rocks it has another, because you you can't just put a bunch of rocks on the ground and say it's not binyan. You could say it's not ohel,
Yeah.
but it's a type of binyan.
Mhm. Exactly. It's not the Tolda of Ohel. It happens to be Binyan still. So, and remember, this whole thing is still Derabanan, right? Because it's still a Mechitza Arai. Because if they're able, Chazal can make a Gzera that you're allowed to do it if you need to go to the bathroom, right? Then it's a Gzera. And so therefore it's not really it's not a Deraita, but it's somehow but it still may be a problem. Uh, so, okay, good. I'm glad we saw that actually, because I think that's a helpful discussion for me. I don't know about you guys, but helpful discussion for me in trying to like figure out what's going on here. And it doesn't solve anything, I don't think, but I think it helps a little bit. So, I wanted to do. Oh, I turned my. Hold on, I gotta find my notes here. Where'd they go? Oh, here they are. Other notepad. Let's do. Yeah. Like we got to do Gimel too. It feels like we're gonna get nowhere, but don't worry, we're gonna get somewhere. This was that Gimel was that it's mutar to make mechitzot, right? Although we made an okimta on it, but we're gonna make another okimta. So Max, take us away with Gimel. In the Mishnah Berurah, sorry.
All right, yeah. Okay.
Just keep that on Gimel.
Okay. Mutar deikar ohel hu hagag shema hil alav. Ulachein gazru bo mishum ohel keva masha'in kein mechitzot. Mechitzot arai lechud lo nechshav ke'ol klal. Right. Okay. So, it's mutter in that case because, this is the mechitzot, because the ikar of an ohel is its top. And that's what the gzera of ohel arai is on. But that's not the case when it comes to mechitzot arai, because those the mechitzot themselves aren't considered like an ohel.
Yeah, but he did something pretty subtle here because he without saying it specifically, a mechitza kavua, right, is a problem. You can't build a keva wall on Shabbos. Don't think you can do that. Even if it's just like litzniuta, right? That's a problem. It's only arai, right? In the mechitza arai that is permissible.
So just out of curiosity, a completely roofless tent, like a teepee with a hole in the top to let smoke out as a chimney hole.
Yeah.
How would that be considered in this framework of Ohel? It would not be one, it sounds like. It has no roof. It's just a slanted wall that tips in, and it has a hole. It actually is dafka missing a roof.
Yeah. It sounds like that.
I don't
Maybe.
know. I don't know.
Was
You
that?
could definitely say it's a roof with a hole in it. Is that not a roof?
It's no roof. It's a wall. It's a wall that curves in, has a hole in the top, but it is specifically not roofed.
Well, yeah, I think if it definitely doesn't have a roof, right? There's no overhead cover. Now, the slanting might be a problem, right? If it's within 3 tefachim of the top, it is more than, a tefach
Right.
wide, maybe. It's because it is giving you, because it's slanted, giving you some cover. But imagine, let's get the easier case for a second, Josie. Imagine, you ever see the Karate Kid?
Yeah.
The Daniel.
No can defense.
Yeah, yeah, he's in the Halloween party, right? He's got the shower curtain
Yeah,
around
the
him.
shower. Yeah.
Yeah, that might be okay to hang up on Shabbos, right? To have when you have no overhead protection at all because there's no slant. That seems okay. So if you wanted to wear that costume on Shabbos, I don't know, that's that might
Well,
be a
you could
lot.
at least open and close the curtain.
Yeah, that you definitely could do, right? That's not a problem. So, but yeah, it seems to be.
Knowing the whole, sorry, the whole umbrella conversation, I think the whole idea of angles is something we need to grapple with because their idea that there is a clear definitional difference between a roof and walls
I
starts to
don't
blur when
think.
you have angles. I mean, it just not everything is clear, you know.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean, they
yeah,
talk about it with the chatanim, right? Which is just a string with a sheet over it, right? Which is a very sharp. The idea is it's a very sharply angled thing
Right.
that is only, one body wide at the bottom, but maybe some number of feet tall. So it's actually a pretty sharply tented item, at least in all the diagrams that they show,
yeah.
right?
I was
So
I was listening to the Rav Asher Weiss had a like shiur on this topic on Ohel Arai in general, but he like covers the umbrella question pretty solidly, both in Noda B'Yehuda and the Chatam Sofer. And he tells a story that someone came to him some number of years ago with like a new Shabbos umbrella that he had engineered, that I need to figure out I can't remember what the specifics are. But it was something about the angles that would solve the problem of 3 tefachim within the tefach of the Gog. And his response was, the guy wanted a haskama, and he said, "You've got haskama number 2." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Go to the Aguda and get haskama from them, and I'll be haskama number 2." Uh, and he said the person hasn't come back yet, but like you can imagine that if you fiddle with the angles in different ways, you could come up
yeah.
with it.
No, definitely. It's there is a thing about it becomes kind of harama at some point, right? It's like it's an umbrella, if it
Yeah.
in fairness, by the way, you have the Hassam Sofer behind you with the whole umbrella thing. If and Vladis, he didn't. I tried to bring him to get him to bring it up again. I seem to remember, and my memory might be faulty. I'll have to go back and watch recordings. When we did this, however many years ago, we last taught Shabbos. Rav Landis told the story of like a non-Jew handing them an umbrella to hold for a second or something like that. Like that they were like doing something for one of the whatever it was, and I think it was his grandfather's like took the umbrella and said, "Oh, it's like I wouldn't like go out myself with it on Shabbos because that's like not what the community does, but like someone hands you an umbrella, it's like there's no violation going on there, right? Like it's so." Um, so yeah, I know. Although, of course, if they hand you the umbrella, you're just standing there. If you remember, right, one of the Noda B'Yehuda, the unnamed Chacham that the Noda B'Yehuda is, dealing with, one of his reasons that an umbrella might be allowed is because it's a moving Ohel, and a moving Ohel might not be a problem on Shabbos. So, anyway.
No, Yehuda reversed that, and he said the moving is what makes you building it all the time.
Exactly. Yeah, he goes the other way with it. But remember, he has actually a good amount of respect for the Chacham. I couldn't tell. I don't think he was being ironic for the unnamed Chacham.
I wanted to ask that.
Yeah.
If he didn't have respect for him, it was like very ironic, right? Yeah. Like you could read it as very biting.
Mm-hmm.
I read it as sincere for what it's worth.
I didn't get the feeling that he put scare quotes around Chacham every time he said it.
He does say towards the beginning that he, based on the guy's answers, he felt that this was a real Chacham, right? That the guy actually knew something, and so.
Well, it was clear that
it was the word hazeh that threw me off.
Yeah.
Chacham hazeh.
So.
Chacham.
Yeah, exactly. It's a pretty amazing tshuva in the sense of just its there's just like some interesting writing in it. Let's put it that way, right? It's like the literary value of it is pretty incredible also. But also just the way he goes through stuff. Even if you disagree with the Noda Yehuda, which the Chasam Sofer clearly does, right? And the Chasam Sofer is not like someone to be laughed at. Let's put it that way. You know, it's nonetheless it's a well written. I find this with all of Noda Yehuda's chubot, even like for good and bad, they're always very well thought out and written and so forth. He's a very good posek. All right, I wanted to do. We said that remember the vilon, you can put the vilon in front of the petach. The shekavua alpha shekavua sham, right? Which the Mishnah Berurah just got done telling us that a mechitzat keva is a problem on Shabbos. So like, how does he justify the vilon? So Max, you did a short one, so do vav also in the Mishnah Berurah.
שקבוע שם, רצונו לומר שאינו עשוי להסיר משם, אלא תלוי שם תמיד. אפילו הכי חשיב מחיצת ארעי, כיוון שהוא נע ונד ברוח מצויה. וגם אינו מעכב לעוברים דרך שם. Okay, so what it means when it says kavua is that it's not made to be removed often. And even in that case, it's still a mechitza arai, even though it stays there and it blows in the wind and it doesn't really impact your person's ability to walk through it.
Yeah, I think because it blows in the wind, because you can walk through it, it's not really a mechitza kavua. So
because it can be blown away.
Exactly. Well, not blown away. It doesn't.
But the rest. But read the rest of it.
Yeah. So
that's actually the key.
Okay. Aval is lechibra.
Yeah.
Lechabra.
Attach it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lechabra. Yeah, you're correct. Lechabra.
Okay. Aval lechabra lemala ulamata uminat stadim. B'inyan she'in nazuz mimkomo asur mishum binyan destimat kevahu. Okay, but if it's attached both at the top and at the bottom in such a and also from the sides in a way that it's not going to move at all, right? It's not going to blow in the wind. It maybe is me'akev to ovrim. Then it's asur mishum binyan because that's it is keva in a different way.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Siman.
What was that?
It's a set block.
Exactly.
Siman keva. I don't know if that's the best one.
Yeah, it is, so in other words, he's got this other definition, and whether it applies in Ohel too, of there's kavua, not the halachic kavua, but the kavua of like you just put it there all the time for a mechitza. It's just there for for a long term. And then there's but that's not really kavua as long as it's like movable and flimsy, right? And you can walk through it. But if you tie it down really well, that's a problem. Yeah, I thought this was a chumrah that we didn't really see in class, and I thought it was kind of interesting. I don't know if everyone agrees with the Mishnah Berurah here, but I thought it was interesting. So,
I mean, it's clear what he's trying to say, that by attaching it on four sides, you're attempting to make it sort of contiguous with the wall that it's stuck in.
Yes, yeah, that's a good point. So,
right, so it's clear that it isn't intended to, because if you didn't, then if it weren't attached on the four sides, then you could shove it aside and move it through.
Exactly. So, but and so even if it's there for a long time, if it's not a if it's something that's not blocking things really at the end of the day, then it's not kavua. So, although it's interesting, right? Because you can make, when he said you're allowed to make a mechitza so that in front of like the candles so that the wind doesn't blow it out. I can't imagine that's talking about a flimsy mechitza. Maybe he thinks that one's one you're going to put up and take down, so it's like temporary in time, and even if it's not temporary or it's not flimsy. So, does that make sense? What I'm saying? Is that so? Yeah. All right. That's okay. Let's move on to bet, because why not? This is did I have one in bet I wanted to do? Right, Zayin. I think that was in bet. Yeah, it was the last one I bet. All right, so this is right. It seems shetokin roshan hachad bedofan asfina v'chovim roshan hasheni bedofan hasheni shel asfina uforsim machatzel telehem letzel. So you have these bows of wood that you put from one side of the ship to one wall of the ship to the next, and then you put a mat out on top of it for its shade. If you already have in these pieces of wood a thickness of a tefach, or a few ein broch ban tefach, im ein ben lazel lazeh shlosha tefachim, or either one has a tefach thick, or they have a lavud, right, where they're within 3 tefachim of each other, and then so they add up to a tefach. Chashive ke'ol umutar lifros lehem b'Shabbat machatzel. It's considered like an ohel already, and therefore you can put an ohel arai on top of it on Shabbat because it's just mosif ohel arai. Dehave le tosefet ohel arai v'sharei, and that's permitted. Mitam zeh. Machasel prusa kedei tefach, mutar lifros shar hamachasel b'Shabbat. So if you have a mat that's already has one tefach that's extended, you can extend the rest of it on Shabbat, right? And when we said that there's this tefach, we said that can't, if the thing is like wound up on a rod or in some sort of things you unwind it, it doesn't count the rolled up parts. That doesn't count for all of this. Wow, everyone disappeared on me. There's no Max, there's no Ori. This is Josie, it's you and me. You didn't disappear, you did. So, okay. And the only one I wanted to do on this was the chutza mina kricha. We saw this in class, but I wanted to do it again as well. Well, Ori is driving, so Ori is definitely not going to read anytime soon.
Once I get to carpool, we just like sit and wait, and then I can read again. I have my book.
Fair enough. Wow, this is commitment to yeah. We should all be zocha to learn Torah while sitting in carpool line. Josie, can you read Ted Zayin for us? Chutz mina kricha.
Chutz mina kricha. Hainu she'im hayta mahatzela prusa l'shem gag uchracha me'erev Shabbat tetzarech shetishaer tefach prus kedei sheyeh mutar lifros hakol. V'chein nira li?
Yeah, it could be liskar v'chein liskar la'el. I'm not sure. So
right.
No, it's v'chein. It's definitely v'chein nira li here because read on. Yeah.
Okay. V'chein nira li ein rochav ha'igol shel hakricha ola b'shor tefach. The hakricha eina chashuva prusa al hagag la'ohel. Ela tzarich sheyishaer tefach parus levad merachov ha'igol shel hakricha Beit Yosef. So this is the case when the machzal has to extend for the purpose of the roof, and you sort of unroll it a little bit on Erev Shabbat. Tzarich shetishaer tefach parus. You have to leave a little bit. You have to leave at least a tefach unrolled. Kedei sheyeh mutar lifros hakol, so that you can unroll the whole thing. And it appears to me ein rochav ha'igul shel hakricha ola b'shor tefach. And it appears that if you have it like rolled up, like an awning rolling, it sounds like, that the width of the roll itself does not count towards the tefach that needs to be extended.
Exactly.
Because the roll is not considered unrolled. It's not considered extended, rather.
Yeah.
It's not considered extended. Al hagag la'ohel. It's on this. Presume if it's if you think of like an awning that you extend out, it's rolled up on the side, and it's not considered extended because it's literally not.
And like to think about it logically, you don't stand under the rolled part to get shade or to get now you could say that's only because it's usually very narrow, but in general that's not the part you stand under to
tefach parus levad merochav ha'igol. We have to leave a tefach unrolled alone from the width of the roll, from the width of the roll. Shel hakricha.
Yes. No. And now yesh minach. Actually, I really wanted to start with yesh me'achronim. I wrote that note. I forgot about
sorry.
it. No, you did great. You did
יש
what I asked.
מאחרונים שכתבו דאפילו הכי לפרוס המחצלת כשהיא כרוכה על איזה דבר ששייך פועל להדיא, אסור משום אוהל. דווקא בזה שהיה פרוס מתחילה הכרחה, לא מכסה בזה כשמשאר לאוהל. So let's say, but there are some achronim that write that even in this case, if you unroll the mat, when it's rolled up on whatever thing it's rolled up on, that it's prepared to be a standard tent.
I don't think so. Even if hachi lifrosa machatzela kishi krucha, to extend it when it's krucha, where for sure like it's relevant to an ohel. So
asur mishum ohel, it's still asur because of building an ohel. The dafka bazeh shaya parus mitchila or chacha loch mizik aser shemashia ohel. That specifically with this, when it's unrolled at the beginning and then rolled up, it doesn't look like an oil anymore.
So
Aval l'titena kach shetehi krucha al devar acher asur.
Good.
So to put it like this on that something that's rolled up on another thing, it's asur.
Yeah, in other words, when it's completely rolled up, if you go rotate you take the rolled up piece and you put it over something, and it's like a tefach wide, that is considered an ohel at the end of the day, because that's some achronim say that, right? And therefore, he doesn't play this out completely. We saw this in class, and therefore, I think therefore we should be machmir to that idea too. Even though we're machmir to not count that as part of an ohel, extended ohel arai, we are machmir to assume that it might be an ohel arai if you go put it over something else. And so we're machmir both ways. So it's not an ohel arai such that you can extend it, but it is an ohel arai such that if you put it over something, it's problematic at the end of the day.
So if you took the roll itself,
exactly,
it's like if you have a schach mat for your sukkah, and putting aside the fact you can't touch it, like if you on Passover, if you go sit outside, eat out in your sukkah, and you can't put your schach mat up on your sukkah on Passover.
Exactly, you can't do it on Sukkot either, actually. But
well, Sukkot's a different issue. Sukkot's a different. I'm talking about. That's why I specifically said Passover.
Yeah. So, but
because
I have
Sukkot,
a very
you can't do it.
important case that I've observed in this regard, which was when I was growing up. I had a friend who had a sukkah where there was a triangular thing on top of the sukkah. So you had your schach, and then on top of the schach there was these like a leaning structure, and there was a rolled up tarp already like rigged on the left. Oh, getting an alert. And then they had like a thing you could pull, and it would roll the tarp out over the sukkah in case of bad weather. So you could stay in the sukkah, right? You'd already be, putter from sitting in the sukkah because of the bad weather, but you had like a way of still sitting there, which was like an extra nice thing. But but I never thought is this building an ohel? No, so it's already there before Yontif, rolled up.
Yeah, but there's already an ohel on top.
It.
But the schach is already an ohel on top of you, right?
Ah, nice. Well, this is being rolled out to provide shelter from the rain.
Yes, I understand. Yeah, no,
there.
But it's extension of an ohel arai at that point, right? Because the schach already the extension at that point. So it sounds like it's fine. It's completely kosher.
Well, and also the rolled up part is sort of on the side already. You see what I mean? Like it's on it, trying to use this principle, I'm sure. But then when you unroll it, it extends over the rest of it. Postling the sukkah, so it's sort of funny. But
so it's an OLRI for an RI.
Yeah, for a dirat RI.
Yeah. It might be interesting whether or not you could roll it back up, right? Because now you're being machshir the sukkah. But that might be a problem. But I imagine unrolling it seems to me, maybe I'm not poskening on this. I'm just like, it seems to me right now that's fine, because it's just like the case of the bowed wood in the ship that we're talking about, right? Once you have those bows there, which is the schach is acting the same way, you can then extend a machatzelet on it, right? So
yeah, and they had another structure already there. You see what I'm saying? On top of the schach. So they had the bows actually for this express purpose, I suppose. anyway, this is like the firm of a firm in Muncie. Like it's really obviously it's like a hechsher mitzvah intended to go above and beyond, but it is interesting.
It's to save all your precious noyes. Like if you have your bed in your sukkah, you want to, you'd like to not ruin your mattress.
Yeah. No, I think it sounds good. I imagine they probably looked right here at this piece in the Shulchan Aruch before they made this decision, or the Rav did, or whoever it was. So, all right,
the unrolling. That's a good.
Yeah.
Or to roll it back up, in other words, when you're done.
Exactly. Yeah, because now you make your sukkah kosher. Although maybe you can even say like unrolling it can be problematic because you're making your sukkah not kosher, right? It's look, anything you want to be able to, if you almost anything you can be oser if you really want to try hard enough at the end of the day. So it's I once heard Ethan Tucker, he took issue. It was at a conference he was at. He took issue with it was Blue Greenberg who says if there's a halachic will, there's a halachic way. And Ethan said, no, I don't think that's true. He says, what I do think is true is when there's not a halachic will, there is not a halachic way. So it's the opposite of the statement is true, but not the statement itself. But
the statement is if there's a rabbinic will, there's a halachic way. And that's sort of the key to this. And not just if there's a halachic will, there's a halachic way. But she was making a comment about the sociology of rabbis and less about
No, I know. I'm not saying that she was wrong. I'm saying that Ethan took it and he's like, so maybe it even works even better. If there's not a rabbinic will, there's not a halachic way, right? Like if the rabbis don't want to be matir something, they're not going to be matir something at the end of the day. It doesn't matter if it's possible. Okay, let's Gimel. And this is, I want to spend a little, we use a lot of time. We may use some time next week, just because we're doing the background stuff on kosher and not kosher itself, like that in the Shulchan Aruch. So, but if you guys will excuse me next week to do some more of this. So you have a bed, and you're putting it, and these words kishema amidim ota, when you put it up, the Mishnah Beruah is going to love this because he's going to have an amazing chiddush on this. He says you can't put the legs first and then put the boards on top of it. Rather you use Wingardium Leviosa to levitate the boards, and then and then you put the legs under it. Sorry, I had to have a Harry Potter reference there because there are other ways to do this. You don't need magic, but that's only when the legs are actually like full on continuous connected boards. Like they are like the walls of a box. Of our raglayim shel mitot shalanu, but our beds, and also the table legs. Mutar b'chol gavna, you can do that. That's not a problem. So they have to actually, right? The ohel has to have mechitza underneath it. Is the general idea here. So much to say about this. But what did I want to do? We should do Yud Zayin. But yeah, let's do Yud Zayin. This is a good intro. We should do. All right, we are definitely. I'm just going to say I'm making an executive decision. But that we are going to next week continue this topic and do all of kosher the week after, if that's okay with people, because I think we can pull that off. So seems so important to me. So even though I love kosher. So Yud Zayin, Max, go for it.
Okay. Hine kedei shenavin heitev et divrei haseif akdim hakdama ktsara. A little introduction. V'hu de'af le'inyan binyan keva af im asa ize davar mashu lehosif al habinyan bein b'mechitzot uvein begag chayav. V'kol shekain im osed kol hagag. Mikol makom le'inyan oel arai lo asru be'osed hagag lechud im lo she'osed hagag kedei lahagen mipnei hachama v'hagshamim v'kayotze b'zeh. De'az hu k'tzat bivchinat ohel. Okay, so when it comes to binyan keva, if you did something in order to be mosif on a binyan, whether it was with the walls or the top, you're chayav. Okay, all the more so if you're doing it on the gag.
if you make the whole gag, right? If you add to
if you make the whole gag, okay, on Shabbos. And when it comes to all arai, it's only the gag. Okay, so for kavua, it's either the mechitzas or the gag. When it's arai, it's just the gag that's problematic. When you're doing so in order to provide some sort of shelter.
Not exactly. He says, so I'm going to back you up here. But
Yeah.
for
Binyan keva, not
yeah,
Ohel based, right?
yeah, exactly. For binyan keva, the problem is it doesn't matter if you're mosif. It doesn't matter if you build the whole thing. It's asur, right? Can't do
For
that.
binyan.
For binyan, right? For binyan keva, which might be ohel kavua too, right? That's actually he says for ohel, for an ohel arai. Okay, now we're talking about they only forbade you from making the gag lechud, the roof by itself, only if you they all well, yeah, there's so many negatives here. I'm gonna do it this way. They only forbade you from making the gag by itself if you made the gag to the roof to protect you from the sun or the rain and similar to that. So in other words, roof by itself, if it's to protect from the elements, that is asur as a derabanan, as an ohel arai. Okay. But keep going, Max.
Okay. Aval
Belav hachi.
Belav hachi lo asru ki im beosek gam hamechitzot arai shetachtav b'Shabbat. Gam lo asru ki im shebe'asa keseder mitchila hamechitzot ve'achar kach hakisui. De'az domek tzad lo keva. Aval im asa lehefech lo asru.
Good.
Okay. All right. Meaning without the kedei lahagen.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, without the kedei lahagen, it's only usher when you make when you're doing mechitzot arai underneath a gag keva or some sort of gag.
Yeah.
On Shabbat. And they also only ushered it when you're doing it in the correct order, right? Which is to say from the bottom and upward.
Mm-hmm.
Or sorry, yeah, right. First the mechitzot and then the kisui is the other way to say it, because that's when it seems like Ohel keva. But if you go lamala lamatza, then that's not part of the gzera.
Exactly.
V'yesh poskim shesovrin debi'inan sheyet tzarich gam kein la'avir shetachtav. Ukivatayhu pasak mechaber lekaman b'siif zayin. Okay, and some people hold that you also need, I guess, in order to be mechayev, you also need the space underneath, and that's how the mechaber paskins later on.
Exactly. You're not chayav because it's still an ohel arai, so it's still derabanan, right? But it's you're still oser. Yeah. So just to summarize, if it's for protection, right, this ohel, then just an ohel for an ohel arai, just the cover itself is sufficient. If it's not for protection, then there's for protection from the sun or the rain, then you need mechitzot. Right, you need mechitzot, and you need to do it in the right order. And according to some, you also need to actually be using the airspace underneath it, right? So you need all three of those things, at least two of the three, if not all three, in order for it to be asur. So, and that's the reason why in some places we're going to see you spread out a mat over things to protect you from the rain. It's a major, is a major problem. And in other cases, we're like, no, unless you actually have real walls, and you did it in the right order, it's not a problem. Again, your table is nobody's using it for protection, from the rain. You might need the airspace under it, but you're not using it for protection from the rain and all. And it probably has legs that are not really walls, just are legs. So maybe not. Maybe somebody has a table that has real walls. But Ori, did you have a question there, or is that just a stretch?
Yeah, it feels like another way to put this that's like a little bit more categorical would be to say they're sort of circling around intentionality, but it's not limited to Well, according to some poskim, it sounds like it's actually limited to intentionality, right? Because either you need this, if I need it and it's not even a real ohel, but I'm using it to protect myself, then it's a real ohel in that sense, a real ohel rai, I mean, a temporary tent, because it serves the purpose of an ohel. If I have the walls and I sort of have an ohel, but I really don't need it at all, I'm really doing it by accident, meaning by one way to look at it, not by accident, but like not for that reason. One way to look at it is to put the top on, to have the top there first. Is not how you make an ohel, right? Like I've sort of removed myself from the context. And then that last step is like really, and only in the case that I actually need that space underneath in some sense, right?
Yeah.
So we're not quite putting it on kavana, but we're almost circling around, implicit kavana might be a way to put it based on the circumstances.
But yeah, if you happen to put something out that covers other things, but you don't care that it covers things. What you care about is like to use the top of it, essentially, like a shulchan or a bed, right? Then, then we're much more lenient, at least, let's say, in that case.
So how would this play out? Your children want to build a fort out of the cushions of your sofa. Is that and let's assume that they're 14 years old. So now, this is a no. This is like, this would seem to indicate that that's something that they should not be doing.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a real question. I feel like it's a real question because the idea of building a fort for play, we've had this question before. Play is like a really interesting concept here because a play fort doesn't really serve the purpose of an ohel, or does it?
It's a psik reshe.
Huh?
Psik reshe v'lo yamut. It doesn't matter if the kid wants to play with the chicken's head. They've still built an ohel.
Well,
no, but if it's a terrible ohel, a pillow fort is a totally fake, meaning it's a play tent because its imagination makes it a tent, but it doesn't really work. Not even I'm doubting if it's even an ohel arai because not only is it not mitzkayem, it's like it's barely even kayam.
So what?
It'll fall on a second, I guess.
Right. I mean, so we clearly have this case. Like I don't know if any of your kids had these, but mine had these spring steel tents that you could, like these cubes that you could pop open with holes in the sides of the wall, so the kids you could string them together and the kids could crawl through them and do all kinds of things. And those on Shabbat would be forbidden to expand.
The Shemot Shabbat Gilchata says that. He actually talks about kids pop-up tents.
You can get a pop-up sukkah like that too.
Yes, I know. Yeah, it's
one person pop-up sukkah.
When I was the rabbi at Syracuse, they got me one, and so I could go around campus and eat in my sukkah and have people join me, and or have people. They wouldn't join me. There wasn't room for two people in there. There was room for one, but you could have someone else get in.
You could change into your Superman costume.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. In the sukkah, or you could have a mincha. But
I feel like you made my point for me because you're saying this is sort of made as a play tent. And I was imagining a case of, and tell me if you agree, Rav Joe, I don't know if you were nodding or
I was. Yeah.
I'm putting up a blanket with some cushions from my couch. So am I even getting to the point of Ohel arai?
Good. So I was thinking about this last night when I was looking into this. I haven't had a chance to find a source on it yet, but I had the same thought you did of like a pillow fort is like not even an ohel arai. Like it's like that thing is like so flimsy that it's just like it doesn't. There's no protection. It's just like a fun little thing so you could crawl through it. On the other hand, what Josie's talking about, like with those pop-up things, those are close to kavua, right? Like those things. I mean, my in fact, we used to when Yara was as my older child, when she was about like 3 or so, she had like a Moana tent or something like that, like that that was up before Shabbos, and she used to sleep in it all the time because it was like a nice place for her to sleep. She had all sorts of stuff in there, and the thing was up for a year or two, right, until it finally broke down. Like that was but yeah,
an actual tent. That's a play tent. So it's in the middle. It doesn't protect from the elements. It serves no survival purpose, but it's definitely a tent in some sense of the word.
Yeah. So, versus, my kids make a pillow fort, and it takes the dog a second and a half to destroy that thing, by not intentionally. She just runs through the living room and the thing is gone. And so I don't know. I want to find a source that actually says that there's something that's less than RI. But it's yeah.
I don't think it's an O.
Yeah. Well, the same thing. This actually, I brought this up once with my chavruta Shani Rosenbaum, with my kids building magnetiles on Shabbos. Right, magnetiles are very flimsy. If anyone here have either played with magnetiles or kids play, it's like, well, maybe they could make something where the covering is more than a tefach. It's not that hard, and they put their toys inside of it. They definitely build stuff like that. Is it a problem? And her claim to me is Joel, probably half the time they build it, it collapses on them. Although my daughter has built magnetiles and put them in a corner, and they've lasted for weeks. So I don't know. I don't have a good answer.
Build an icosahedral magnetile.
Ooh, yeah. It's so we'll see.
If we talk about this too long, we're going to start talking about Legos, and I'm not sure I want to get up to that sugya.
I have fought the Lego fight and I lost. So I lost because the Orthodox community here in Ann Arbor, everyone uses Legos on Shabbos and they bring them out in shul, and so I lost the Lego fight.
Wow.
Especially now that my daughter is an age where she's actually making semi-permanent Legos things. And although Rav Nachum argued with me the other week, and he was like, "No, I don't think Legos are permanent." So I don't know.
Unless you glue them together, they can come apart.
They can, but they're not. So can my house, though. It's.
No, I'm gonna no. I mean, you could take Legos apart a lot easier than you can take apart a brick frame house.
It is true. It is true. But
but the threshold starts to become a little mitushtash in an interesting way. Now, listen, I have a 5-year-old in my house, so Legos are definitely impermanent because they get destroyed very quickly.
And you might, I'll just say, we should, since we're going to spend some time next week on this anyway, and this is an important halachic discussion. My daughter right now, she builds, she's really into Star Wars. So she got some Star Wars Lego kits. She builds an X-Wing or something like that. And she follows the instructions, or sometimes she does it on her own. And they've been sitting on her shelf now for a bit. And, so
I have Lego art that I have literally installed in my house that I do not intend to take apart.
Yeah.
But if you're building with, if you're building with little Legos, trying to build something that's going to be a tefach by a tefach, that's actually pretty significant. If you're building with Duplos, the little kids Legos that are each of them this big, it's not hard to build a wall that stands 3 tefachim tall.
It's true, but those Duplos they stick less well than Legos do. Also, yeah. So it's no, these are important questions in terms of binyan, and I will say we should look actually, because the Shemet Bat Kehilta has an entire section on kids' toys on Shabbos. It's a very not that we always paskin for him, but his notes are really good. And he's got some really and these are important for adults too. Let's be honest, adults play with things too. We build puzzles on Shabbos. We maybe this might be an interesting question. And it might be other questions when we get to borer and stuff like that also, but maybe not, because you want all the pieces at the end of the day. But yeah, recreational activities in Shabbos is actually a really important category in general. And so far all we've seen is don't read Sefer Emmanuel, but play with your astrolabe. So that's and read science books, right?
You can read Homer. It doesn't make your hands tummy.
Yeah, it's true. Yes, that's the only, I think the only reference to Homer in the Gemara actually is
in Yadayim 4.
Yeah, so it's not really, I guess it's the Mishnah, but okay, good. How are we doing on time? We have good. I want to read. Let's do one more Mishnah Beruah before we go. Josie, Asur lehaniach. This was is that what I wanted? No, it's not the one I wanted. Sorry. Where did I see it? We're in Gimel Kaf Bet. No. Did I skip it? Oh, wait a second. I know where I didn't write it down. But it was, I think it was Yud Chet.
Asur lahaniach is right there.
Yeah. Read it. Go for it. Read it. Yud Chet.
Okay. Asur lahaniach v'chulei b'dikduk katav lashon zeh. The dafka lahaniach asur. The have b'zeh b'matchil la'asot mechitzot la'ohel. The asur kishamaniach the achar kach hakrashim lemala. Aval im hayu munachim mikvar bazeh hamakom. Mutar lahaniach hakrashim alehem. V'chen yarali b'saif katan yud zayin. So, so it's forbidden to lay the boards down on top of the frame. It sounds like, right?
Well, it's asur le'aniach haraglayim. You can't put down raglayim, right, in order to lay the boards on top of it and then lay the board on top of it.
And it's so this is very specific language that specifically to lay them or to place them is forbidden. Because this is exactly like we start building the mechitza of the walls of a tent.
I think it's when I think it should be keshem matchil, right? When you start building the mechitza.
It says kim matchil.
Yeah, I think it means keshe, right? But
it's like the beginning of putting the walls up of a tent.
Exactly, and keep going.
The asur kishemaniach ve'achar kach hakrashim lemala, and it's forbidden to lay them and afterwards put the legs on top of them, the boards on top of them rather.
Yeah.
Aval im hayu munachim mikvar bazeh makom, but if they're already sitting there, mutar lahaniach hakrashim alehem. You can put the board if the legs are already there. You can put the boards on top of them.
Exactly. That's why I think it should be kishem archil asot mechitzat lohel, right?
Well, you can argue with the printer of my sefer.
Yeah, no. I think that's the way he means it. No, mine's the same too. But it's in other words, right? Yeah, he's like reading the Shulchan Aruch very miduyak here. He says if you put down the legs and then put down the board for the bed, that's a problem. But if the legs were there before Shabbos and you just put the board on and you take the board off, that's not a problem, right? Even though it's got full mechitzot, right? Now remember, this is of course you're not using it for protection for anything, right? There's reasons, but that's an incredible kula. I don't know how often it comes up, but it's a kula for sure.
And that's what I had at the end of Seif Katan 17.
Yeah, that was the one we just read.
Right.
So.
Ach imamita rachava biyoter asur ledat magen Avraham b'seif katan kaf aleph afil be'ofen zeh. But if the bed is really, really big, really wide, it's the Magen Avraham would forbid that. It's forbidden according to the opinion of the Magen Avraham in Seif Katan Kaf in his Seif Katan Kaf Aleph afil be'ofen zeh, even in this viewpoint.
Yeah, this was the whole thing with covering a box, right, on Shabbos, right? We saw that the Magen Avraham that if the box is already there, to cover and uncover a box is actually, he's saying it here, it's not a problem, but because it's not lahagana in terms of like from the rain or from the sun, and but if it's a very big box, then actually they see it as problematic. The Magen Avraham at least sees it as problematic, but just like to like you have like a little jewelry box or something on Shabbos, you can put the cover on and off according to this because the mechitzot were already there from Miba'od Yom, so I thought this was important. So, and this is where, or you had a question before we end? Is that?
Well, I just think I was trying to remember this gimel here in the Shulchan Aruch. Let's see, mitah mamidimotah. We clarified this when we read it earlier in the week that this is talking about the box walls, not the little thin rug line, because those for sure would be mutter.
Exactly.
Okay. So it's the box walls first of all. But if you're putting a bed together, this chumrah or kula doesn't have to do with if you want the space underneath or not, right? I mean,
yeah,
if it's a bed, then you want the top, not the underneath.
No,
and
people would store things under their beds.
Right. Okay. So let's just switch to a box because then it's basically the same thing. But if it's a big box, if you put the cover on to protect the contents in some way, I don't see why it wouldn't be a little bit more like Ohel in that case. Even if it's not to protect you, but to protect the contents, does that not count? That's my question.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I want to look into it a little bit more, but it sounds like you're right because the bed is not actually, although it might be. We're going to get into that. The bed might be to protect things, and we'll see that next week.
I accept. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I think a really good way to pose the question is protecting items in a box. And this is what I mentioned also on Monday. Like, the whole idea we had that a kli that's over 40 sa'ah, you start to be into Ohel land.
Yes.
Does that mean is that because a person could fit in there and that's what they were thinking? And Ohel means a person protector, or can Ohel mean a clothing protector, or is that a kli by definition?
Yeah, that's a really interesting diuk there. I don't know. I got to think about that. And I will
we have a thing about having to be 40 sa'ah, the size of a mikvah.
Well, we didn't we saw
that was like the size of a person, right? Like you could climb in it.
Yeah,
right. Well, that's the
We didn't see
like
why the Magen Avraham. I don't think he ever specifies 40 sa'ah. He just says big, right? Whatever that may mean. But
right. No, I got the 40 sa'ah when we were doing Sikun Kli, and I think it was talking about one of those storage closets.
Or like a migdal or teva or yeah. I mean, I have to go in a minute, but I will say, by the way, I don't know that a box is always to protect the stuff as much as sometimes it's snuta, right? You just want to put it away and have it covered up, right? So it may be snuta belma. It may not be actually for protection. Okay, with that, it's a good time to stop here. We will continue this next week. And so please keep this in your mind while we learn kosher as well. And everyone have a good Shabbos. And if you are able to fast tomorrow, may it be a good fast for you. So,
Amen. Thank you.